Welcome back to yet another Thoughtful Thursdays episode on Karishma Connect. On this episode, I have got Shriya Kolte, founder of Imagination Inc., an interior design consultancy in Pune that has recently expanded into Bombay as well. We talk about something that I'm really passionate about on the side, and that is interiors and spaces and colors and design and all of that. And Shriya tells me more about how that has evolved over time and what's in it to look out for budding designers and what they should keep in mind. Also, what are the trends that you can keep an eye out for if you're planning to design your own home? How Imagination Inc. supports its customers with edgy designs that are also traditionally informed and keep in mind their personal space. Go check out the episode. Until the next one, I'll see you soon. This is Karishma. You're tuned into Karishma Connect. Do keep coming back every Sunday and Thursday. Ta-ta. Thank you so much, Shriya, for joining me this morning on Karishma Connect. I know it's a Monday morning, it's busy, but thank you for making time for this podcast. A pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Karishma. It's lovely speaking to you today. Thank you.
Most welcome. Dear, what I do first on this podcast is, I tell people, you tell your journey best. So I'm not going to define it for you. Tell me your journey. Tell me how you started and what's so special about where you are today.
Honestly, I started like I've always been into the creative fields. I've been an art student. I've had my art shows when I was in college and just out of college. So I always wanted to do something in the creative field, and life as it took it, I even ended up studying jewelry and intricate designs. So attention to detail was very much a part of me, and I think that gradually evolved into designing spaces and homes, and that's what's got me here. And I think what's special is you can make such a big difference to people's spaces and homes, which is so emotional. Like, I love that feeling at the end of the project. So it's
Yeah.
super exciting.
And that's what I want to dive into, from your profession, because even when I read your profile, for some people, imagination is it's a creative tool or it's a part of their career. But for you, it's pretty much your purpose with the company itself. So tell me more about that purpose.
So honestly, that's exactly that's even a reason how and why we came up with the name, because we wanted to be absolutely direct.
Mm.
Because when you're doing interiors and when you're dealing with clients, a lot of times people can't imagine what we're doing. You can't visualize what we're talking. Of course, there's everyone doesn't have that same creativity and wavelength to be able to imagine. So we wanted to be that we help you imagine. That's the whole point, and that's what we do. We first learn about you, from you, about your space, about you, and then we help you and ourselves imagine what the space is going to be looking like. For us, I think that's the whole purpose of imagination. So being as direct as possible and getting out there that, okay, let's do this together. Let's have an imagining conversation. So yeah.
And that process must have revealed some really interesting connections, right? Because never do we think usually that a space can influence so many aspects of a person's life. Do you have anything to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are times, when we are, with experience, we've come across so many different personalities. So it's actually very exciting to see how different people, people don't even realize what their hobby or likings are at times,
Yeah.
because you're so busy in your mundane routine. And then when we go down the whole designing process with us, and we're like, okay, you know what, we need to know this about you, or about your wife, or about your child, or about your parents. And that's when they realize so many things about themselves, and they discover, like, oh, I didn't know this about my wife, like she would love this, and so on and so forth. So it's super exciting in a way to see that even a doctor can have a photography as a passion which he carries, to a great extent, and so on and so forth. Like, it's amazing to see how people create the time and balance life. So it's a lot of learning for us in many ways that way.
Mm. And how has it evolved over the years? Because you're operating in a scenario that has a range of choices as opposed to a
Right.
traditional kind of approach where, okay, I feel, this is my personal opinion, but correct me if I'm wrong, that from being more furniture focused or, the physical aspects of design, it's moving into an emotional aspect or into an aspect of finding out more about the person itself. So how do you operate in that evolution, and is that evolution even true as such?
Honestly, there's been a great evolution. Like, I've been in Imagination Inc. has been there for around 5 years, and just in the last 5 years itself, I've seen such a drastic change. Because, honestly, people are way more aware now of what they want, what they don't want. Like, internet and Pinterest and all these platforms have made, so much available to people and so much variety. So even before they come to us, they all come with a Pinterest board. Ki, I have what I want, what I don't want. So, that makes the whole aspirational part even more receptive. And also earlier, like, people were a little skeptical that, interior design or mehenga hoga, like it'll be expensive, can I afford it? They have their margins. So with competition, with time, with easily available information, right from furniture to design to every aspect of it, which is, so information is abundant. So that makes it very easy for clients also to be able to jump onto taking decisions, and they get competitive pricing for it. So that's where we are,
And
being able
that's my next
to.
question to you, that how do you deal with that kind of competition? And especially when you have the big names to get, especially when you're starting out in a field where you have such big names to compete with, and then you have your own goal, how do you kind of get that through?
Honestly, to compete with the big names, it's the easiest because everyone looks at a startup and, oh, these guys will give me the best deal.
Huh.
So it becomes easy to play that card. But
Ridiculous.
also, yeah, also it's like you don't always need an expensive furniture to make a statement, is what we at Imagination believe. And I hope the near future artists and upcoming designers also try to inculcate that. Like, you can make an IKEA furniture or a locally sourced furniture equally beautiful and statement by playing around with it with your creativity. It's the way you even handle that piece of furniture or that space which is given to you. So it's not about having the big names or the big furniture brands, there for you all the time. Feel like, since you mentioned the evolution, I also wanted to add a point there that, since we're a country who's heavily influenced by the West in everything and anything that we would like to do. So that also has made people more that, I really want my house looking that way. I want a minimal house. I don't want this kind of a house. I want a Western looking house. So that aspiration also, and yet the personality of the person or the family is not that Western. So to try to balance that out is where we designers or professionals come into place and, help the client balance the functionality as well as the design part.
It's an interesting point you said, because I was intrigued to even learn from you about this, that, how do cultures actually end up influencing design, especially in a country which is driven by so many different kinds of cultures? How
Right.
does it influence design?
So honestly, culture is heavily an influencer of your personality, of each and every one, wherever in the world you may be, because it is what you're surrounded by, it is what you're talking, it is that it becomes eventually becomes your language, it becomes your style, and it starts reflecting in your personality. And when you're curating a space, it has to speak your personality.
Yeah.
So culture does. Now, very recently, there are a lot of designers who have started trying to bring about modern interiors, is what we call it, modern Indian interiors, because that is so important, because we don't want to forget our roots. And luckily there are a lot of big names who are supporting local artists and local artisans, because it is sad, like 2 years 3 years down the line, there were people from abroad coming in taking our local artists abroad. And if that would continue in the next 5 to 10 years, we would have to go there to buy a peacock or a lotus design. You know what I mean?
Very true. I know exactly what
Yeah. So it is very important to acknowledge. I'm not saying do completely traditional spaces or traditional homes, or with the whole temple carving and all of that. I'm not saying that. That's may not be everyone's choice. But what we have to, take the responsibility to make people even realize is how to imbibe those elements in a very Western way.
Yeah.
So in a modern way. So that will appeal to the next gen as well. and is, it will still carry the culture which we want.
Yeah.
So we have to ensure that we create that balance. Even have a like an example to share, one experience of a friend. They had for one of their projects, the client invited a Belgium photographer to shoot the whole space. And then the guy came in and he's like, okay, this looks like an Italian home, but you've not done this right. You've not done this right. Where's the Indian home? I thought I'm coming to shoot an Indian home. So, that essence of India, what we are losing of the culture, we need to ensure that we try to inculcate and make the client also enjoy that. See, everyone wants a modern home, everyone wants a Western looking home. But what we try to do is that you have to strike a balance between both.
Yes, very true. Very true.
All about that. Like, don't forget your cultures, yet you evolve with time. See, I'm not saying you still have to be in the 18th century or 17th century. No, hello, we're living in 21st century. Fine, you do things accordingly, but not forgetting your roots.
Just yesterday, I was interviewing another founder of ice popsicle brand, and I asked him, I said, how did you come from Australia back to India? And he said, Karishma, India is one of the biggest markets right now. And the amount of wealth that we have, forget about everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, but disposable income is at a peak. I'm not kidding. Like, even for India, even in the interior industry, that's what is happening. Like, people are willing to shell out that extra buck for the artistic or the designer home, which earlier people were resistant towards. So people are enjoying that luxury, which they would be resistant.
Yeah.
So it is true. India is one of the biggest markets.
Absolutely. And then tell me right now, in this exciting market, what are some of the trends that are of most interest, or that people can, explore?
So honestly, there are multiple trends. Trends are cyclical. They come, they go. There was this material called wicker in the middle, which was like booming. There was brass, which was everyone wanted brass. And so now there are like color palettes, like a sage green or a deeper, calmer tones, which are more trending now. People are shying away from the flashy gold, which was the trend a year or two back. Yeah. So people are evolving with their taste. There's a lot of carving in marble which is happening. Earlier people would simply clad marble and it was done. Now it's like no plain marbles. We need carving on that. We need some elements on that. So there are these micro trends also which we do notice and try to absorb. And a lot of it is now become more and more functional. People are becoming sensitive that okay, it looks great, but is it functional? So it has to have that balance. Previously, it was more about okay, I want 50% of my products only for the looks, the other 50% for functionality. Now it's like no, if it's in my house, it's got to be a balance. So I think that is the trend also, which people are understanding and trying to strike the balance there.
What are some of your tips? Because you have started out young in this industry, what are some of your tips for aspiring designers? How do they make their way through and, cut through the market?
Honestly, first things first, the main thing for me, what I would recommend is KYC. Know your client. That is one of the most important things even before you start your design approach. So even at Imagination, whether it is me or any of the other team members at Imagination Inc., we make sure that we spend a couple of hours understanding the client. When I say understanding, not ki aapko, which color do you like, which finish you on. No, you have to understand the personality, because any space you're designing, whether it is a commercial or a residential or a hospitality, you have to understand what kind of a personality is going to be coming home every day, is going to be looking at that space every day. So they have to be able to connect with that space. It's not just about doing up a pretty space. So that's why I say knowing your customers, knowing his passion, his hobbies or her hobbies, like even their families, not just the individual, but even for the family, what do you like doing as a family? Like these are some of the questions you have to be able to ask and understand. That how do you spend your Sundays? Like people do kind of observe in the first question that hello, like I've come here to design my space, what are you asking me? But if we don't know that, we will not take those requirements into account. Like if you like playing board games, you like playing cards, you like to play a sport, like we have to accommodate for those things when styling your home and designing your home. So I feel that's one of the basic things. If someone gets that, they've hit the nail. And then you can, then the journey is smooth and it's easy. It's enjoyable, even for the client, even if there are hiccups, he will really connect with that space, which is, I think, the primary agenda of any and every designer.
Stream of lack of trust, it's there, right? Like people are
Right.
having that trust factor before they give their money into a designer and say that, okay, you take over the project. How do you deal with that?
So honestly, trust comes in with conversation. It comes in with spending time with the client. It comes in by showing them what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
So we have a strong enough portfolio to show them. If it comes through word of mouth, it becomes easier for the clients. If it comes through some kind of a, reference which they have seen in any sector, that becomes easy for them. So we do have a couple of sessions when they keep seeing the salesperson around, the same person around, they're like, okay, this guy's not going to run away with my money. He's always been around here. When they see our physical office space, they understand that, okay, they have a studio where they operate from. So if anything goes wrong, I can catch them. That's the main thing, they have. So they just need to know that you're not running away anywhere. So I think that works for us because that's what we do. We have certain projects that we show them. We have a portfolio. So it makes it easy. And honestly, there's so much demand because, the real estate industry is booming. There are so much sales. There's so many nuclear families which are coming up, which all require space. So the services are required. So when the services are so much in demand, how much of a competition you have, if you're doing well, what you're doing, you're always going to grow, is what I believe. Because word of mouth is the biggest trust gaining factor, biggest marketing tool that we have today. So I think that is what works best.
What's next for you? What's next for Imagination, and where do you think you're headed? What would you like to do? Would you like to expand? What are those dreams like?
So it's always interesting to grow. So currently our plans are, so we started operations in Bombay as well. And so we're geographically growing in 2 cities now. We've got a team there. We've completed around 20 plus projects there so far in the last 1.5 years. And we're also growing in 2 different sectors within Pune. So one is a residential, one is commercial, one is now we've started a hospitality sector, which is fairly new for us. We've done a couple of restaurants. Now we're aiming to, create a whole different segment because it's a lot of fun, but it's a whole different ball game. So yeah, that's the 2 ways we're growing geographically as well as sectorial. So I see myself, like, honestly, the whole aim why we started and what our mission is to be able to provide designer spaces irrespective of the client's budget, irrespective of the space that they may have. So I think that's what we aim at doing, and I hope I'm able to achieve that and provide that in more and more spaces.
But you've done that in a relatively short time, haven't
Yeah.
you? Just 5 years. What's been your secret to that? You've just been at it, or what?
Just been at it, just focusing on the work. We did have our teething issues and learning lessons in the first couple of months, but after that, there was no looking back. And it's like I told you, KYC, it helped us build long-term relations. Like even that first client is still in touch with me. Just there's no work, but just hi, how are you doing? You know what I mean? So that relationship building is priceless, and we don't even realize who and what comes through which client. And since we always focused on great work, designer spaces, irrespective of the budget, I think in an Indian market, that really has helped us because people are price sensitive, whatever said in that. So I think that's the secret we've had, and it's worked.
Shreya, on that note, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's such an enlightening and also creative conversation, if I can say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It was lovely speaking with you. Thanks a lot.